Welcome to another episode of Pursuit. That was a very, I don't know what was up with that.
Honestly, I couldn't see it because of.
That was cracked out. No, my welcome. Welcome to another episode of Pursuit. We gotta even it out. We're continuing on our study today. Surprise, Kevin's back on stage.
They finally let me back on stage.
First of all, no one was stopping him from getting back on stage.
That
right?
is true.
No one stopped
They only put 2
him.
chairs and won't let me sit on stage.
He set up the stage. Thank you. All right. Asha, what do you have for us?
Today's opener will be a fun one. I'll be telling you some words that the Brits and the Aussies say, and you'll have to tell me what it means, what you think it means.
Okay.
Okay, the first word. Should I tell you where is it
Is this
from?
a competition?
No, but
Okay.
okay. Should I tell you where it's from? Like,
Can that be a bonus point? Oh, but it's not a competition.
Could it be a competition?
okay.
Oh, look, the-
Okay, it's a competition.
Okay.
Okay. So, are we telling, do you guys
No,
wanna
that's
tell-
a bonus point.
Okay. First one, ankle biter.
A child. British.
Not British.
Australian. Sorry.
Yes, Australian, correct.
Do I get that bonus point?
No, ma'am, you said.
All
Okay.
right.
Next word, arvo.
Your hands.
I can't see where your hand is.
It's off the table.
All right, so here's one. Hands like this, so
I
we're
had
right
the
there.
same problem. I couldn't see her hand.
Okay.
Well, you
okay,
didn't
you're
say
not on
anything
camera,
about
all
it.
right, so just relax. All right.
I
you
am
had
on
you
camera.
had you had your episodes. All right, relax.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, arvo.
I don't know what it is, but it sounds Australian.
It is Australian.
Can you repeat what you said?
Arvo.
Is it like aggravated?
No.
Do I get the point for the country?
Yes.
Yes.
It means afternoon.
I'll
Okay.
see you in the Arvo.
I'm never gonna get that.
Okay, this one's easy. Barbie.
Barbecue, Australian.
Are
Okay.
these just all Australian? Is that what we're?
Don't talk back. Okay?
Like, this was gonna be British for sure.
Billy.
Her dad.
No, that is billiard.
It is actually Billard.
What?
Don't worry about it. His Billy is the word?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say it's Australian still.
Mm-hmm.
I see the meaning.
Billy, is it short for something or is it a word?
We can ask questions.
I don't know, but I will.
Can you just tell me
You
what it
like
is, and
it.
I'll buzz?
I like it.
Oh,
It
okay.
produces something. Hot.
Okay, it's a teapot.
Oh, I
Okay.
would never have gotten
Next word, blimey.
A blonde.
British.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's just like an expression. But it reminds me of a pirate word, and I don't know why.
Because that, what is that? Read the word for word.
Do you guys want the definition?
Yeah.
Similar to to the American wow.
Yeah, so it's just an
Bl-
expression. Like a.
Yeah, blimey is used to describe something that takes you by surprise.
Do I get the 2 points for that?
Sure.
Nice.
That is so blimey. Blimey.
Okay, she's very lush.
British.
Mm-hmm.
It's like rich or like very pretty or like extravagant.
Like which one? Cause you said like
Which one's the most correct?
yes.
She said yes.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Oh, which one?
Yeah.
Rich.
I know you can.
No.
Like in depth, not like money rich. Okay.
It means attractive.
Dang it! I should have said pretty.
Then none of the things you said were right. Why did she? Did you say
I
pretty?
said pretty. I said
Oh,
rich, pretty, or extravagant.
Okay.
Just don't be hearing stuff.
This is like skateboard all over again.
Okay.
10 seconds ago.
Yeah. Dog.
Can I get the spelling?
D-A-G. D-A-G. Dog.
D-A-G.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a long A?
It's not Guyanese for dog. It's
For?
what's the meaning?
I don't know. I have so many points at this time if you wanted to try.
Is it dad?
I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't even sure what the game we were playing until like 3 questions in. So
Can I give them a hint?
Sure.
Sheldon Cooper is a dag or dog. Dog? Zag?
It's not dog. Not D-O-G.
Yeah, dad.
D-A-G.
Sheldon Cooper.
A nerd?
Yes, correct.
Nice.
it's messed
British.
Up. Is that? Let's keep going.
Okay.
If I say anything else, get myself in trouble.
Brass monkey.
I don't even know what that is.
Go for it. Just go for it.
Australian. British.
Yes.
I won't get the point because you shook your head, but I don't know what it is.
It's used to describe something that's extremely cold.
Cold?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay, this
This
one's
drink is brass monkey.
I'm feeling brass monkey today.
okay. This one's super easy. Kevin, can you at least try?
Yeah. I'm here. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Cheers.
Look at the finger!
Kevin buzzed. Cheers.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Cheers, mate.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the right word is to describe that because I would just say it's you just share something.
Can I steal?
Like it's not a toast.
It's a greeting.
What are you? What
Are we supposed to be guessing where it's from or the
No, you do
definition?
that.
Both.
Okay.
See, I told you, I really don't know what game we're playing right now.
He said you just cheer someone. I say it is a greeting
Yes.
of some sort.
It is. It is the greeting.
I was actually gonna say salutation. I was like, no, it's not, because you're not like a greeting is a salutation.
Yeah.
so-
Cheers means like thank you.
Cheers. Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers, mate. Sure,
I
mate.
guess.
Thank you for playing this game. Who won? Very through the air. You just never know. You never know.
Take it away.
All right, so we've been talking obviously about different, I guess, qualities of Jesus that he portrayed while he was on earth, right? As to the, I guess to the way we should look to treat people, right? You know, we've been talking about kind of instead of just taking things from like a faraway stance, kind of zooming in, going the extra mile, compassion, all these things. So the last thing we kind of want to talk about is Jesus being a joy giver, right? And we see this a lot because Jesus actually went to a lot of parties in the Bible,
Whoop whoop.
right? So have you ever been to a party where
No.
everyone was waiting? Are you just saying that because your mom lied? I've never been to a party. No, never. Have you ever been to a party where everyone was waiting for someone to leave so that the party could actually
Yes.
start?
Probably. I'm just very oblivious a lot of times.
So I remember there was a Sweet 16 I went to, and Brother Ezra was there, right? For those who don't know, that
Dropping names.
was our youth, like 2-3 youth leaders ago. And it was really interesting that, you know, they had like the whole, like she kind of like walked in and did all the stuff. And I think they used to do like the candle thing or whatever back then with the Sweet 16.
Some people still do it.
I don't know. But, so she does like the whole like formal
Like program.
program thing that everyone's eating, and you can see like everyone So Pastor Singh left first, right? Who was the founding pastor of our church. Then my dad leaves, and I was surprised that I was still there because by then, like, my brother finally had a car and stuff, so I'm there still. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay. And then I see Brother Ezra leave. And once Brother Ezra leaves, all of a sudden the music changed and everything changed. And looking back on it, I laughed so hard at that part because even then, his daughter was like, how did you stay? And I went home because she would have been more like age appropriate. And I was dying. Cause like I didn't know what was about to happen. Like I really didn't. And then from that party, any other like party I would go to, it was really interesting to see who was everyone waiting to see leave for things to start happening. It was so funny because then at one point I became the guy people are waiting for like me to leave so things can happen. And I was dying because there was one party where I just sat there. It's like, I'm not leaving. Let's see what happens, right? What are you doing that I can't see? Because it's so much fun to be a troll. And
Someone told me the other day that I get too much fun out of being a troll.
What do you think I was doing in the group chat today?
Anyways.
Whatever video you guys sent about the dude questioning the girl, I didn't really care.
Yeah,
At one
we
point,
can
I was
tell.
really about to say, okay, I'm done trolling you guys after work. And then you guys kept going, like, and I was like, all right, no, I guess I can keep going. But it was just really interesting to see that because I think, especially in church circles, like partying is like a bad word, in a sense. And I guess it depends which Christian circle you're into, but I think it becomes a bad word. Yet, what is the first miracle that Jesus?
Water into wine.
Yes, right, and he does it at.
Water into wine at the wedding. Thank
There you go. Bonus points. Bonus points if you know where in the Bible the story's from.
Whoa.
It's one of 4 books. So
I was gonna say Matthew.
it might be, honestly, I just took it from John. I don't know. Like, after I asked the question, I'm like, it might be recorded in multiple.
Yeah, because they all have like different.
Well, we're gonna. I was looking at it from John chapter 2.
Okay.
But so I found out some interesting things about this wedding, right? Because I know we've kind of heard the story before, and a lot of times the story just focuses in on Jesus turning water into wine, right? Have you ever, or before I go into the story, have you ever thought why is this like an important miracle, or important enough for it to be mentioned in the Bible? Because compared to other
Aside
stuff,
from it being the first.
yeah, I mean they could have listed anything as the first,
Yeah.
like, or Jesus could have done anything as the first.
Why was that most important? Was the family someone of stature?
I don't think the Bible actually says it. If like,
Because I feel like there was someone of political power at the event. I think because.
so verses 1 and 2 just say, the next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the celebration. And then it goes into they ran out of wine in verse 3.
I don't know. Why is that so important?
So that's what we're going to talk about.
Nice.
So
I was really.
no, I think it's important because you see that Jesus' first miracle starts off at a celebration as compared to, I think some of the other miracles we focus in on are kind of, so until Jesus does the miracle, they're kind of surrounded by this sort of like gloomy atmosphere, right? It's a person is really sick, someone is dying, or someone is dead, someone can't talk, they can't do this, whatever the case is, right? Or they're demon possessed, right? A lot of his miracles involve someone's already at a low point, and in this one miracle, it's one of the only miracles I can think of in which we see Jesus. Everyone's already having a good time, right? It's not a gloomy situation. There's nothing negative really about it, except that really, compared to what Jesus can do, something inconsequential happens, which is they run out of wine, right?
But I feel like that's also a big deal for an event like that.
Right. So But compared to what we would see Jesus do over the course of his ministry, almost seems inconsequential, right? That he would deal with turning water into wine, right? But so here's a couple of things that I found out about, I guess, Jewish weddings at the time, which is the first thing is that these were not like a one-day thing, like modern weddings typically.
Western wedding.
Yeah, Western wedding, right? So this was probably an all-week affair, right? So Jesus has been with these people for a couple of days. So when the wine runs out, some of the research I found that they believe it ran out about day 3 of maybe 5, right? So there's still 2 more days to this thing, right? And what was interesting is that the reason that the wine becomes so important is that it was almost as though the wine was a symbol of joy in the ceremony, or the party, I guess, right? So Jesus' first miracle goes beyond just turning water into wine, but actually goes to him creating joy in an event. And I think that becomes the bigger deal, right? Because you can only imagine, up until that point, Jesus, he has the 12 disciples with him. He may have done some preaching, but if he's done no miracles, a lot of people may just think of him as another rabbi, you know? But this kind of solidifies him, oh no, there's something different about him, right? Because no other rabbi has done that. The other thing that I thought was interesting was kind of going to what you were saying, where it does mean something that he turned water into wine, which is he saved the bride and groom and maybe like the families from embarrassment.
Yeah.
Right? So with that, right, this idea that Jesus' first miracle is at a party, right? What do you think that means for us? Because I know, growing up, partying is kind of a weird thing, right? For us, especially in, I don't want to say our particular church, but like culture where maybe more so our parents come from, plus with the church culture, partying is a weird thing, right? So how do you feel about the fact that Jesus' first miracle is at a party?
Well, I think first we have to look at why it's a weird concept. I think because there are a lot of like worldly or like fleshly concepts or connotations to partying, right? So in that concept, I can see why partying is a weird thing, like within our situation, our circumstances growing up. But in this particular one, where it's like a wedding, it's a joyous event. Sorry, what was the question again?
Do you think,
full-
well, just how do you feel about the fact that Jesus'
Oh, it was
first
at a
miracle was at a
party.
party when you look at how, I guess, the view of partying like growing up was?
I think because a lot of times when people hear the word party, they think of a lot of other things. But also when you are at a party, there's a lot of fellowship, right? There's a lot of intermingling. There's a lot of just like getting to know the people that you're with and making new memories and like good memories at that, right? So the fact that, like you were saying, he made the wine was a representation of their joy, right? Or of happiness that they're going to have. So the fact that he turned the water into wine was like an abundance of joy that they will have moving forward in this chapter of life.
And I think what's, again, interesting about this is you brought up the point of there's sometimes certain connotations with parties, right? And we're using the word party, but I think it's really just like there are certain social gatherings, even in society today, where I think a lot of people feel as like a believer you can't go, right? And maybe to an extent you can't because there's nothing godly happening. And in an extent, I'm sure there's places like that, and someone's gonna say something like, "Oh, there's nothing good's happening here," and whatever. But I think generally speaking, there might be something ungodly happening at a certain event, but we can't use that as a reason to just not go places, right? Because there might have been something ungodly happening at the wedding in Cana, but Jesus still went to celebrate because obviously, if his mother's going,
It's someone close.
it's someone close here, right? His mother and he was invited. So clearly, Jesus is going to celebrate this couple and this union. So I think one of the things we have to be wary of is not becoming, I guess, so like dogmatic that it stops us from celebrating people and celebrating and just being joyful for people.
I think it goes back to what we talked about in one of the previous episodes. It was where we said it's not about your action per se, but it's about your intention behind the action. So if I know that this, like I need to guard myself before I go into a situation or into an event, I'm going to take the precautions that I need to take to make sure that I don't like misstep.
Mm-hmm. And I think to that, I think it's also important to note that if you can't guard yourself, then maybe for that time you shouldn't actually go, right? And I think that's where a lot of believers get tripped up because they're like, oh, I'm a Christian now, and I can just go back to certain places I used to go to and sin, and I'll be fine. And then they realize, oh no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a really dangerous thing because also to that, I think when we look at the way Jesus conducted himself, because you actually see, and I think it's in Matthew 11, around verses 19 or 20, we see that like the Pharisees and other religious leaders, they'll come up to Jesus and start asking, why are you going to all these parties, right? And we're going to use the word party again very loosely here for social gatherings, dinners, all these things,
Just
right?
events.
Yeah.
In general.
But their accusation wasn't that you're going to parties, but you're going to parties that are being hosted by unbelievers, right? You're going to parties that are being hosted by people who, maybe culturally, and that's what I thought was interesting, maybe culturally they're Jewish, but they don't actually follow the Jewish law, right? Because for the most part, I would imagine everyone in the area would have been Jewish, right? Except for the occupying like Roman soldiers, right? But the religion's like, well, these people are sinners. They're not good people according to our law. Why would you associate yourself with them, right? And what I thought was really cool is that Jesus never shied away from being seen with unbelievers, right? But then that begs the question, how do we treat unbelievers in our own lives? What are your thoughts on that, right? How do we treat unbelievers?
I think I wouldn't be able to generalize that as a whole.
How do you treat unbelievers in your life?
I try to treat everyone with the same level of respect,
Okay.
or like the same, like treat someone with dignity,
Okay.
right? Regardless of their background or what it is that they do or where they're coming from, you should have a baseline respect for like people in general, just as like you're a being that God created, right? You may have made mistakes, you've fallen, whatever. God created you in some way, shape, or form. You are a creation of God, right? So purely out of that, I try to have at least a level of respect for everyone else.
So, okay, with that, right? I know one of the things that always, let me not qualify it yet, but one of the things that I've seen, so I don't want to kind of give away the answer, is there was someone that used to attend our church, and she stopped attending years ago. And I saw she would repost like videos of like a street preacher. It was like, all right, cool, he's preaching. And then so I started looking at like his videos, like, okay, well, like, what is he like doing? And a lot of it was like, oh, I'm gonna go to like the New York City like Pride Parade and just yell like, hey, you're going to hell.
Well,
right? And that was something I was like, that's kind of weird, right? Like, I don't remember Jesus going to like a group of sinners and just yelling, you're going
a
to
sinner.
hell, right? I mean, to some extent, he did say like, repent for the kingdom of God is at hand.
Yeah.
But I feel like what he did and what you're doing is vastly
there's
different,
a little difference.
right? And I always thought that was interesting. And I don't know if you've like seen that like in person or if you've seen it online or anything like that. If you have any thoughts on that before I jump into my thoughts.
I don't think it's right.
Okay.
Because you're immediately turning them away. Like you're immediately condemning someone. right? That's never the way to start a conversation or to get someone to try to listen to you.
Yeah.
You're already coming at them with hate.
And that's what I've always wondered about when we look at Jesus and the example he gives, right? Even when he responds to the Pharisees, right? In I think it's Luke chapter 5, it says in verse 31, Jesus answered them, "Healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners and need to repent." Right? And he says this after Jesus calls Matthew the tax collector to become a disciple. And when he does that, Matthew in turn then holds a dinner at his house, right? Who do you think Matthew invites to this dinner?
I feel like he only really knew tax collectors as well.
Yes, right? And why that's significant is because tax collectors were considered sinners in that time. So, and the NLT uses some very strong language. It says the religious teachers asked Jesus, "Why do you eat and drink with such scum?" Right? And I just thought, how many believers today have that view of unbelievers, right? And sometimes it's not just that they're an unbeliever, right? It kind of goes to like, well, what sin are they committing?
Yep.
Right? Because I think for a lot of us, we have like a hierarchy of like which sin is worse than which, right? And you see it play out all the time, right? I don't want to say it because I feel like that'll get us like a strike on YouTube or something, but even though I'm pretty sure we said it before, but you go after people who commit certain sins and treat them like scum and then want to know why they
turn away from
God. Right? And I think the significance, again, of Jesus going to a wedding, turning water into wine and showing, hey, no, I'm going to celebrate these people, but also I'm not going to compromise my beliefs, which I think is like one of the most important things. Because I remember years ago, a pastor was talking in our church on a Sunday night service. That's how long ago this was. And I can't remember if it was a testimony or not. I know he wasn't preaching, but he made a point of saying he went to one of the clubs here in like Queens, and he was praying for people. And where... Like,
Juve?
Huh? No. No, this was before those were those names.
What?
This was a while ago.
I don't even know what it is anymore.
No, before they opened. Yeah. Stop naming stuff and I start responding so I know all the clubs in Queens. Give me a bad luck now. But I just remember it was so funny because in like the same breath he was like, "Oh, you shouldn't go and do this, this, and this." But then he went to that place and we're like, "But you just said we're not supposed to go there. So why is it okay?" And I can only imagine this guy who at that time had to be in his 60s, right? Just walking around like...
Did he go in or did he just...
No, he went in. He said he went in and like at the time it was just a bunch, like all the young people were just sitting in the back and we're all just looking at each other like, what is happening? And you could see the look on like one or two people's faces because they're like, did we get caught in there? Like, which was the best part of the whole story, but it's like, did you get prayed for last night? But it was just really interesting because again, right, I think sometimes we have this notion of, hey, you can't go there, but if you don't go where unbelievers are, and I'm not saying go to a club and just start praying for people or go to a pride parade and start yelling at people, but if we're not where unbelievers are, how can we ever reach them?
I feel like there's a very slippery slope with that, though. Because I get the sentiment, but also you have to make sure that, like we said, you take the precautions to guard yourself.
Yes.
Right? And to make sure that you're in the right mindset to do that.
100%.
Because a lot of times, like you were saying before, like a lot of times, like a new believer, a new Christian will go to certain places that they've gone before because they're like, oh, I'm different now. Mm-hmm. But they go back and you fall back into the same patterns because you're not grounded in the same way that you should be.
Yeah. And
yet.
And I know, like, in my own personal experience, there's been times where, like, I've hung out with certain people, and I'm like, I know I shouldn't have hung out with you, but I did, and ended up falling back into really bad habits, because, like, I wasn't ready to like be in any type of like friendship or relationship with you. But what I think is really interesting though, even when you look at the story of like with Jesus and Matthew, Matthew calls people to his house,
Yep.
right? And I think that sometimes us just opening our doors to people, right, is one of the greatest ways we can share the gospel by just inviting people to where we are, right? Or, you know, right, as you said, it can be a slippery slope trying to go into a club and just lay hands on people and pray for them, right? And please, I do not recommend that. I really don't. Do not go into a club and start just like, hey, you know, I feel like you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. But you can always invite people to a dinner or something like that. And I think, one, the actual act of just reaching out to people says so much, right? Going back to our talk about compassion and going the extra mile, right? Just having that dinner with someone means so much. And then I don't even think it's necessarily about preaching the gospel every time, right? Because I think one of the things when we talk about Jesus just being someone like a joy giver or someone that brings joy all the time, right? Going back to the talk about being salt and light, right? How do we do that in today's culture? Where wherever we go, we're bringing salt and light.
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you. Sorry, was that not clear?
I wasn't sure if it was like a rhetorical, like you were going to go into it.
I'll throw it out there.
So how do we be the salt and light, essentially? I think, and this is easier said than done, but trying to maintain that like level of godly joy within your life, right? So like you were saying, like this episode, Jesus is the joy giver. And again, with circumstances of life, it can feel harder to do than it is to say. But when you have that foundation, you have that relationship, it's easier to find. So it's easier to find joy in those unpleasant circumstances or in those uneasy situations that you're going through. And in terms of the salt, I try to think of it as like being flavorful, right? So Jesus has seasoned my life, right? How can I share that seasoning? What? He has seasoned my life, so how can I share that seasoning, right? How can I share what he has done for me to others? And like you said, it doesn't have to be about preaching the gospel every single time you see someone, right? You can also build a relationship that leads into that. But you have to make sure that in your mind that is like centered. Because it can be easy to just build a friendship or build a relationship with someone and not have any like God in any part of it. Yeah. If one person doesn't want it to be, like doesn't bring it up, you have to make sure that that's like in the forefront of your brain. Like, hey, I am building this relationship to build rapport, but this is why I'm building rapport with this person.
And I think that's so important. Going back to, I feel like we mention it fairly often at this point. Just the idea of being intentional, right? Just hey, you know what? I am going to befriend this person because at some point I want them to have a relationship with God, right? And the way I'm going to do that is by becoming their friend, right? And hopefully that will kind of, in some ways, earn me the like relational trust to then go and say, hey, you know, I believe in Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I was talking to someone the other day, and I was talking about how, because like it's very obvious, like within our relationship, our boundaries, and like not boundaries, our relationship and like our dialogue, that I am a church girl, right? Like I'm very active within the church, right? Like, right? And so they were asking, like we were talking about something, and I was like, well, I don't like to like, a lot of people just, every conversation you have with them is about like the gospel or and stuff like that. And there's not a problem with that. It's just not my vibe. So I was telling them, and I was like, well, I don't like to shove it in people's faces all the time, but I'll hope that from the conversation we have about it and from the way that you see me living my life, that you'll see that it's working in me, right? Yeah. And it's doing something.
And I think that's really what we see Jesus kind of live out throughout his time in ministry, right? More so than the miracles is the fact that when you think about like the woman at the well and things like that, these interactions he has, it's different than what people expect, because Jesus was there with his, I guess his principles, right? Of this is who I am, this is what I'm going to represent. So no matter who you are, I'm going to represent that, right? Going back to, I think, was it last episode or the episode before about him touching the coffin and things like that, right? Jesus knows, hey, this is who I am. I understand you guys have your rules, right? But I'm going to represent the Father, and this is what the Father would do, right? And I think that's so important for us as believers to kind of remind ourselves and to kind of just pray about it to some degree, that, hey, when I go places, I have to remember that I represent the Father. I represent Christ. I have the Holy Spirit in me, and I have to now live that out. It doesn't mean I have to jump down someone's throat when they sin or do something that, disagrees with God's word, but I should be living my life in such a way where as they talk to me, as they get to know me, they realize, hey, no, there is something different about this guy or this girl, or, there is something different, right? What is that difference? Oh, it's Christ in me, right? The hope of glory. And I think that's what's so crucial about living our faith out. Yeah. I was really hoping you would have caught to do that, because I can't see it with my laptop here. But I think that's really just it. I have nothing else to say about this.
Do you?
Half of them weren't even paying attention.
Oh, I was pointing to the camera. The audience.
Oh, I thought you were pointing.
The wrong kind of salt.